Hey guys, it's Steve with Spirit Mechanics, and you caught me being blind in my own house. And, as promised from Wednesday, we're going to be going over some Pluto stuff. So, taking a breath and taking that minute that we talked about um, in the quick word on Wednesday is going to be very important. So, we're going to jump right into it. Pluto is the only retrograde that we have going right now. Now, is that going to be uh, the end all beat all for a little bit? No, we're going to have some changes coming up very soon. But currently, Pluto is the only planet that is in retrograde that is currently directly affecting us. Now, what does that fucking mean, right? And what I mean by that is a lot of people only focus on Mercury. So every planet has its own retrograde. Because of that, it has its own function. It's able to give certain insights, certain lessons, certain shifts. And because of that, the energy shifts around us. That's what these forecasts are, is literally a projection of what it is that could happen. So, Pluto. Pluto is a planet that gives a lot of credence to inner work. It causes inner conflict. It creates situations that, you know, either fire you up or make you think or make you reflect. It's a retrograde that is literally designed to help you be a better you. The problem with this is that inner conflict thing. So the things that we thought were perfect, or the things that we thought served, or the comfort zones that we have that we're unwilling to give up, or the choices that we made that have consequences that we've yet to actually deal with. All this stuff comes to the surface. But why? The whole point of Pluto is to make those changes. It's the planet of transformation, transmutation, and transition. So we're literally talking about moving forward and letting things pass, letting things die that need to, ending cycles, breaking patterns, removing chains, so on and so forth. Use whichever analogy you want. Now, the other thing is at the end of Pluto retrograde, it's also the planet that governs regeneration and rebirth. So we're letting things die, we're letting things pass, we're letting things go, at least to the best of our ability. And then we're given a lot of beneficial energy at the end of Pluto to help us go, these were the right decisions. This was what was healthy. This is what was best, right? So, what does that fucking mean for the forecast? So we just came off of Venus. Venus is now, doing its own thing that way, which is awesome. At least on my part, I'm not a fan of Venus retrograde. But what had happened during Venus is all of your relationships were actually tested. The things that were minute little issues that you kind of brushed off became very big problems, at least by perception. Were they? Sometimes. But were all of them? Fuck no. It literally, Venus is drama for the sake of drama, because it wants you to pay attention to what it is you view as an issue and what others view in you that is an issue. And it forces said issue to be discussed or worked on. So you can imagine having Venus and then Pluto piggybacking on it, how much of a problematic situation that has been. We don't have to worry about that now. It's okay. Venus can't hurt us for another year or so. It's okay. You can breathe. Um, but because people are coming off of that particular situation, right? Where they were scrutinizing not just themselves, but their romantic partners, their platonic partners, their business partners, so on and so forth. Um, Everyone's going, okay, well, this was brought up about me. Here's the situations that I brought on myself. Here's the problems that I caused that wound up blowing up into something else. Or here's the lack of communication. Here's the situation as a whole that has holes in it. And everybody is doing this number, living in their head. That's going to be an interesting and dangerous thing if you're not careful. So, looking at the forecast proper. So, we're looking at the good or the metaphysical benefits. Right now, because Pluto is the only thing that is, rocking, we're looking at neutral order. Neutral order is an interesting state, and it's one that typically doesn't last too long. So, last week we were in chaotic order, so forced change. Now we're in neutral order, which is consequential change. Essentially, everything rolls the way that it needs to. Everything has been set on the right course by the chaotic order shift and is now at a point to where it's going on autopilot. The great news about that for metaphysical gifts and your clairs is that they're going to function the way that they should. There's nothing that's going to get in the way of them other than your perceptions or, uh, in all honesty, a lack of training. Now, here's an interesting go. For those of you that are experienced with your clairs and know what it is as far as your main gifts that you focus on, you guys are going to see not necessarily a lull, but an ease, almost an uncomfortable ease to the way that things work. So if you were having to struggle bus through readings or working with specific energies or coming up with incantation for spells, whatever it is that you particularly do, that's not going to be an issue. It's almost going to be like uh, getting on an elevator or flying on a plane or getting in a helicopter and going to a very high space from a very low space and stepping out for the first time. It's going to feel like altitude sickness because it's literally going to be a you're able to breathe for the first time in a little bit. Don't be afraid of that. That's good shit. That means that you are actually at a point where you're regulating. So keep that in mind when you're doing your stuff. If it feels easy, it's because it is. If it feels difficult, you need to stop and think about why. Now, looking at the metaphysical issues or the bad stuff. Now, neutral order is one of those particular shifts of kind of like neutral chaos. If you don't start anything, there won't be a problem. In other words, now is not the time to self sabotage and get in your own fucking way. It's probably going to end poorly because things are going to sit still after that and wind up stagnating if you're not careful. That also applies to gifts and metaphysical practices. If it ain't broke, don't fucking fix it. If this is what you've chosen for the time being, allow it to ride. See what it is that you can change within that parameter. So, okay, I'm this type of medium. Well, I need to focus on being able to perceive things a little bit more clearly within that space. So, kind of like would use an example of a physical medium, somebody who can experience what it is that's going on around them, even though it's on a spiritual level. So, spirits coming up and trying to tell their story, a physical medium experiences what it is they're trying to say, as opposed to hearing or, viewing what it is that they're trying to say. Let's say you have a chronic illness. Most physical mediums do, of some kind. Let's say you have a chronic illness that is pain related. If someone is coming up to you and going, I had this soul crushing pain right before I passed, but you on a regular basis go through bodily pain, it's going to be very difficult for you to differentiate between your regular pain and someone else's deadly pain. Being able to tell the difference is the goal. So that's what I'm actually getting at here, is that within the confines of a physical medium, being able to tell the two apart is what's important. And you should be focusing on all of your gifts or your clairs in that particular way. Adding new things or trying to experiment right now, in a heavy way at least, is not really advised. Does it mean that anything horrible is going to happen? No, it just means that you might not see any major progress until, after this particular shift is over with. It's better to get the fundamentals down and get your process down before you start fucking around, right? So, looking at the ugly or the mundane effects, this is literally what a lot of people um, watch this for, right? What's going to happen on the day to day? What's going to happen with people I know and myself? We talked a little bit about that at the beginning of things, but just as a very quick recap, Pluto causes inner conflicts, and because it causes inner conflicts, people are going to be literally both understanding where they fucked up and taking on more responsibility than they should. Because, as you know, as most people know, we are our own worst critic and definitely our own worst emotional enemy. And we have this particular tendency, because most of us, if not all of us, suffer from the human condition, to take on the burden of someone else's emotional state. By the way, that's not empathy. So, taking on that responsibility, well, it's probably my fault when it's not. Or I should feel a certain way because, I'm being told by this person that I don't, or I should, or, you know, I'm letting someone else's trauma rule the way that I feel and the way that I function. There's a lot of that that's going on right now. Now, am I saying that you shouldn't take responsibility for your own fucking actions and your own fuck ups? No. What I'm saying is that you shouldn't take responsibility for someone else's. Being able to tell the two apart is going to be difficult for a few people, for a handful of people. Other people are going to get frustrated that those particular people can't do it. As I mentioned in the quick word on Wednesday, take you a minute. Realign yourself, find your patience, figure out where it is that you are lacking in that situation before you start focusing on someone else's, you know, calling it what it is, inadequacy, or, you know, um, insecurity, or just a lack of fortitude. And I know that these things sound really harsh when I say them that way, but that's where a lot of argument comes from. That's where a lot of miscommunication comes from. That's where a lot of flexing comes from, is the ego. That particular moment where a nerve is touched and then there is an internal explosion that leads to an outward display of bullshit. People are going to be struggle busing right now. We're getting into spring, we're getting close to, fiscal end of year. There's a lot of projects that people are starting, renovations. There are people that are graduating. There's been prom. There's been, a lot going on. And that's just on the outside stuff. That's not the interpersonal things that are going on, the changes in family dynamics. There's been a lot of, death and change this year that's been very oddly raw. Um, so people are going to be in their heads about this stuff. The worst thing that you can do right now is get into a battle of egos. People are going to be in their feels, they're going to be in their heads, and if they are not in either one of those, they're going to want to be in someone else's business. Now is not the time to be like, I can fix you. You shouldn't do that anyway, but now is definitely not the fucking time for that. And it's also none of your business until it's made your business. You have your life to live, you have your needs to meet, you have things that you should be doing that are a lot more important than getting wrist deep in someone else's issue. People need to learn to ask for help. People need to learn to communicate. And if they don't, that's their business. That is an important lesson to learn right now. It's one that really needs to be a mainstay in a lot of people's heads right now, so that you don't take on someone else's burden, so that you don't get lashed out at, so that you don't have to deal with ego clashes. Let people vibe. Let people vent. Let people emote. This is how they find themselves. This is how they come back to zero. If you want to be there and you want to help, make sure that you're cool first. Make sure that you're content with where you're at first. Make sure you have your shit together first. And then vibe. Listen to listen. Don't listen to fix. Don't inject yourself into their situation until they ask you to. Sometimes the only thing that people need is to hear themselves talk it out. Don't make a problem when there wasn't one. Understand this last thing. This is going to be a massive year of intense shifting. Things are going to be brand fucking new by the end of the year. Not just for spirit mechanics, not just for me. Literally, it's going to be a full fucking shift. Things are going to be different. They're going to feel different. They're going to work differently. Now is the time to make sure that you're ready for that. Take your time. Take your moment of stillness. Take your moment of silence. Allow what it is that needs to be retired to retire. Allow what needs to die to pass on. Give yourself that moment to grieve who it is that you were, and allow yourself to transition into what it is that you are and want to be. Things are going to get better. Regardless of how bad they are, they will eventually get better. And the reason why that is life continues forward. It propels us through change. Something is going to shift that is going to be awesome. It's going to be better. Who do you want to be when that happens? Where would you like to be when that happens? It's not too far off. As far as elemental affinities, right now, 100% we're looking at water and water only. The reason why is Pluto is an incredibly order driven planet. It may bring chaos, but it's because things become so structured that it just becomes heinously oppressive and causes a lot of chaos in return. Just like water. When we dam water up, will eventually find a way to either break the dam or cut a new path. If you allowed water to flow without any kind of structure, without any kind of control, personal control in this regard, such as dams and levees and locks, you wind up with intense flooding. Water can crash and destroy rocks and structures and create large waves, tsunamis that can engulf entire towns and drown them in an instant. But water also is something that is needed for life. Every living thing on this planet has to have it to survive. This element is very important. And what kind of situation are you wanting to find yourself in? Are you somebody that is forcing yourself to stay pigeonholed, to dam that water up, so that eventually the levee is going to break and the flood is going to take everything around you? Are you the person that allows the river to do as it does and the flood happens anyway? Or are you the person that's a little bit smarter and moves that particular river in ways that it can still flow naturally, but has some stops, has some breaks, has a little bit of moderation? Are you going to be the person that floats down the lazy river? Or are you going head first, shirtless, into whitewater rapids? Think about this kind of stuff. Where are you at? What kind of situation are you in? Are you cool? Are you good? You need a hug? You need a friend? You need to talk? You need a tranquilizer? Or do you need to be that for someone else? Do you need to give those things to someone else? Do you need to be present for someone else? Think about your situation, where you're at, where your conflicts are, and where it is that you can resolve them before you fuck around with anybody else's stuff. That way, when they do eventually ask you for help, you're right there. You're already ready. And you don't have to worry about where it is that you stand in their situation. If we want better, we have to choose better. And in order to choose better, we have to allow ourselves that moment. So, a lot of heavy stuff for this particular forecast, but it is done. And hopefully, you guys get something out of it. If you have any questions about the forecast, how it works, why it is that I do it the way that I do, of course, you can get us on Facebook. You can get us at mechanics.com. You can get us here on YouTube or on every social media known to man. Uh, you can find us. It's not a difficult thing. And we're always willing to explain. We're always willing to teach. Be watching for new Bridging the Gap episodes, so our raw footage of paranormal investigations and things. That's coming out. We've already got an episode that's out. Brian set it out. So check some of this stuff out. We're trying for y'all. But I'm going to let you guys go. And until I see you again, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and remember that those that have the power to change themselves have the power to change the world around themselves. Love y'all.
If you like this video, make sure you check out the Spirit Mechanics YouTube channel, where we have dozens of videos going into various spiritual topics, some music, and we take you on our adventures while we ghost hunt. Don't forget to give us a like and subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with every new episode.